All right, welcome everybody to our second week of class. You have made it through the first one, so great job. I just wanted to quickly remind you that remember last week you were supposed to not only add to the introductions area of the course, but also the week one response to reading discussion area. If you have any questions about that, please send me an email and we can take a look at it. For this week, we're going to continue our focus on sensory writing. We have some things in the discussion board to look at, and we're also going to be, of course, drafting for that final draft of the paper. You might be going, we have a paper due at the end of the week. Well, I think that this is going to be pretty painless. It is short, only 1 to 2 pages, double spaced document, so it's pretty short. And it's all about your experience. There's no extra work to do outside of your own experience. So it should be pretty harmless. So hopefully it will be a fun essay to do rather than a chore. But I do want to go over sensory writing and what we have to accomplish. So this week, please make sure that you are reading in the Longman Rider, page 139 to 153. And we're going to discuss this reading in the discussion board for week 2. We're actually going to have 2 threads for this week's discussion. I'm going to show you that right here. So we have, of course, the week 2 reflection on reading, which we will have a reflection on reading every week. And this is the one that's worth points. But then we also have the rough drafts area, which you can go in here. It's not worth any points. Post your rough draft of the essay to this thread and then ask your classmates for some feedback. Another great thing to do here would be if you go to the online tutoring at some time this week and send them your rough draft. If you could post what you got, some of the feedback that you received from the online tutoring to the rough draft area, that'd be awesome. Just for the sake of we can all learn from one another and from the feedback that you've been given as well. So keep that in mind. It's going to be helpful as you get ready to turn in your first essay, and that's due August 31st by 11:59 p.m. That's Sunday night. And you can wait till the very last minute, but I suggest that you don't. Of course, that's Central Time, not Mountain Time, even though I am in Mountain Time. Okay, so like I said, you can post for no extra points your draft so other people can take a look at it. I also have some workshopping guidelines that you can look at. You can find that link in the rough draft thread, which help you kind of have an idea of what to post for that critique. So like I said, we have our sensory essay due, and I wanted to go over the details of the assignment and then talk a little bit about sensory writing and what that entails. So with that said, the first essay assignment of the term is called the sensory essay. A sensory essay, or descriptive essay, you might see it that way, is an expression of what the 5 senses experience in a moment of time. So your job is going to be to write about a specific moment in time utilizing the 5 senses. So this would be a moment. That means not over a week's time or a couple days. This is actually one moment in time. I would even expect most of you not to even have an hour's worth of time that you're describing. It could be a single minute. It just depends on how you present it. So keep that in mind. It's not a long space of time. So I suggest that you describe a moment that has recently happened in order to have it fresh in your mind. We discussed this a little bit in the discussion board this week. So I think that it's important to have that fresh in your mind so you can recall all the details. I even suggest that you take a trip with this specific assignment in mind. So I have a couple of examples. So you could go to a park, a restaurant, a coffee shop. I saw mentioned a basketball game, or it could have been volleyball, I'm not really sure. Sorry. Other people say they're going to go to a restaurant or maybe their backyard, whatever it may be. And you could even take a notebook with you and actually take notes on the subject. You know, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you tasting? What are you touching? What are you smelling? in all of those senses. And also, I suggest taking a look at the rubric for this assignment. You can find that in the syllabus at the end of the syllabus, and you can find it in the assignments and quizzes area under sensory, under week 2, and then the sensory essay details. So you can find the rubric for the assignment, which of course the rubric is the little chart that I use to grade your work. So it shows what all is expected, how many points each thing is worth, so on and so forth. So check that out as well. So one of the things to keep in mind with sensory writing, you do not have to write a story. This does not have to have a narrative quality to it. It doesn't have to have, you know, the traditional beginning, middle, and end of a story plot. It's really just about sharing details. You might have an overall impression that you're trying to give the reader, but it does not have to have that linear progression at all. It can, but it doesn't have to. You can use first person perspective with this essay. That's the I or me perspective. That is completely fine. And try to be creative with your description. So that means try to avoid vague phrases like nice or pretty. Both of these are subjective, meaning that your pretty may be different than my pretty. Your nice may be different than my nice. That's why it's important to use vivid language that paints a picture in the reader's mind. So you can also utilize similes and metaphors. Of course, similes are when you do comparisons that use the word like or as. Metaphors are just comparisons without the words like or as. So for instance, you know, her eyes were as blue as a summer day on the Gulf shores. Or perhaps you would use a metaphor like Liz's gameplay, or no, try that again. Liz was a lion on the court during the volleyball game. Okay, so she was a lion, not she played like a lion. So that's a metaphor where you're comparing someone without the use of like or as. Little bit of formality or formatting, shall we say. So the essay needs to be 1 to 2 pages long. That's 1 full page of typing and up to 2 full pages of typing. Somebody emailed me and asked if they can write more than the required amount. Yes, you may write more, but I expect it to stay under 3 pages. Like, oh, I'm writing 2 pages and then it happens to go over a paragraph, that's fine. But if it starts getting 4, 5, 6 pages, then you are just causing your other classmates not to get their assignments back to them in a timely manner because I'm having to read a lot more. So please try to stick to 1 to 2 pages. If you go over a little bit, that's fine. If you're under 1 page, that means that you will have points taken off. So keep that in mind. This needs to be an MLA format. So there is an example of MLA formatting in course documents. And you can also go to your textbook, which has some MLA formatting examples as well. This includes double spacing. So double spacing is where you have an extra space between each line. So it's not as bad as you might think. So a double spaced document is a lot shorter than a single spaced document. Please do not press enter at the end of each line. Double spacing is very easy to do. Basically, you open up your Word document, go to right here under paragraph. So there's this little icon, click on that and go to 2.0, and that's how you double space. So if I type blah 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 and it's keep on typing, sorry, I'm not going to write a bunch of words, you notice that there's an extra space between the lines of type because I formatted it. So make sure that use this little button here, go to 2. If you have an older version of Word, I believe that it's going to be up here along the top. It'll say formatting, and you go to format, go to paragraph, and then you could change it to double space, and that would look like this. And you could go to line spacing here and click on double. There should be 0 on this side here, spacing before, spacing after, no extra spacing between paragraphs. So how did I do that? I went to this paragraph section, I clicked on this little arrow, and then the paragraph formatting box opened up. This is the same way it would look on an older Word version. So spacing before, 0, spacing after, 0, line spacing, double. Okay, so it also needs to be in Times New Roman 12-point font. Um, I do this just for the sake of everyone being the same and it being fair in terms of page length. The margin should be 1 inch all the way around. That's basic MLA format. That means there should be 1 inch of blank space at the top, bottom, left, and right of your document. And how do you do that? Why don't I keep that Word document open? Excuse me. Generally speaking, this is going to be formatted this way anyway, so you don't have to usually mess with the margins. But you can see up here with this ruler, it has 8 inches across. That's the width of a normal piece of paper. So this space here is gray. That means that it is going to be white space on the document. Same with over here. And then on the left hand side there's another ruler. If you don't see your ruler, go to view and make sure this little button is clicked here. So we have Times New Roman font, 12-point size, double spacing, 1-inch margins. And that's basically the format of an MLA formatted document. You can submit this assignment, as a .doc, .docx, or a .rtf document, and you submit that through Quizzes and Assignments. Let me take you there. You go to Assignments and Quizzes. You're going to scroll down to week 2. Click on that. And then click on the sensory essay area. This has a description of the sensory essay, which we're going over right now. And then it has this right here, which is where you turn in the final draft. You click on that and turn it in through there. So let's talk about sensory writing and how does it paint a picture. So I have a picture up on the board for you. It's very lovely. It has blue skies and white clouds and a beach with footprints and looks like tire tracks, and there's a beautiful ocean view, some cliffs. It's gorgeous, right? And you know, but I wasn't there. I mean, I don't know if you were. I wasn't. I didn't take this picture, but I look at the picture and it's pretty. I'm experiencing this picture through my sight. I cannot experience it through any other detail because it's not there. So it's kind of like if a friend went on a vacation and came back with these beautiful photos and showed them to you. Well, that's nice. It's a visual representation of where they went. Cool. But you, as the viewer, only get to recognize what you see. You do not actually get to feel like you were there because you don't experience any other sensory detail other than sight. Now, what's amazing about writing is that we can tap into the human brain by using descriptive details and tap into the senses of our readers by using details from all 5 senses. So describing what this was like at the beach through all 5 senses and actually transport our reader to the place. I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, have read a book that really transported you to where that book was taking place, and you felt like you were there in the story. And that is partially because the author uses descriptive language. And what does that mean, descriptive language? Well, it's basically sharing with the reader what it felt like, what all of your senses experienced in that one particular moment. So if I were to put myself in this moment, I might describe where I'm standing. So if I'm standing on this beach and I have the dry, hot sand seeping between my toes, making me want to jump into the water because of how hot the sand feels. It's like little needles pinpricking the bottom of my feet. And then I run over to the water and dip my feet in the freezing ice cold water of the ocean, and I can smell the salt in the air and nearly taste it on the tip of my tongue because it's so pungent. The waves are crashing into the shore. The sound is like a freight train, over and over again, crashing and crashing. And the sights are gorgeous. I'm surrounded by blue in the ocean, blue in the sky, and I can't wait to get to those cliffs and take a look from a new vantage point. So what I was doing is basically describing as if I were there. And then if my reader were reading that, they could actually feel like they are in the picture. And that's basically what descriptive writing is you're using details like the crashing of the waves and the sound of a train coming over and over again. That's the sound of the waves. So you're kind of getting the reader to connect by using a simile, the train, to understand what that sound was like. So if you've heard a train, then you've heard the waves. If you felt pinpricks on your skin, then you felt the sand when it was that hot, and so on and so forth. So using descriptive language that the reader can connect to and then experience with you the image. Now, your turn. So this is another picture for you to think about. Now, I used my own descriptive language for the last picture, but look at the apples on the page here. So, looking at this apple, think about things like your sensory details. What does it look like? What would it feel like? So, what would the bag that it's sitting on feel like? What would the apple feel like? What does it taste like if you took a big bite? What does it smell like? What memory does it evoke in your life? What does it sound like? Really, can you hear an apple? Think about it. But really, what memory, what image does this bring to mind? So how can you connect to the audience with your language? So when I look at it, it would be different than the way you look at it, because the memory and the image that it evokes in your mind is different than mine. But if you can describe that memory, if you can share that memory with me, then I can be there with you in that moment. So you see, thinking about it, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it taste like? Those are questions that you should ask when you are determining what you're describing in the sensory essay. It may not be an apple or a beach, but it could be a moment in the park. It could be that game that you're going to this weekend. Whatever it may be, use your senses, all 5 of them, to think about what are you experiencing in that moment. Now, of course, we're not going to use details that are perfunctory, that we don't need to have, that are just, okay, I have to have a feeling. What does it feel like? But think about the moment that you're experiencing. Sit in that moment and find out, what are your senses experiencing? And that, using that, describe it in your essay. Other things about sensory details, like I said, sensory details allow the reader to take part in the action. It's like they're really there. It can create a clear zoomed in picture. So think about it in this way. If I had a landscape, so this is a picture that shows the horizon line. So you're having a ton of detail, tons of detail, to where you only really see the big picture, right? Maybe mountains and trees and rivers and just a ton of stuff, and you see one big picture. What I'd like you to do is zoom in and paint a portrait, meaning that you're zooming in and you're getting, although a smaller picture, a shorter amount of time. You can see every little detail, every little flaw, every crease, every line, and then you can bring out the details. Not be overwhelming with so much stuff that we don't really get a clear picture of what's going on. And try to make your writing interesting. So one of the things we talked about in the discussion board last week was cliches. We want to try to avoid cliches. So using descriptions that you've never heard before. I think of the phrase, if the rose is red, the red rose, her lips were as red as a rose. I've heard that lots and lots of times. And it's something I'm sure was gorgeous when the first writer wrote it. But now it's done so often that it's like, okay, red rose, blah, blah, blah. Roses aren't always red. I think it's just not true. It's not true. Roses are not always red. One of my favorite sensory details in a book that I've read was by Scott Westerfeld, The Uglies. Very first paragraph of the entire book, the character is in a horrible mood, is looking out her window and says, "The sunset is the color of cat puke." What? It's cat puke pink, I think is what it says. And I'm sorry, I've seen cat puke. I never connect cat puke to a sunset. But this author did, because he was conveying not only a picture, like that pink color, but he's also conveying a mood. Like, oh, cat puke pink. Blah, it's gross. So you can actually take that interesting language and create a mood with your descriptions. And do that with vivid words. So think about when you're writing your essay, if you have a dark mood description and then a light mood description, a happy mood and then a sad mood, well, that's kind of confusing to the reader. So try to keep one mood, one idea, one overall theme in mind as you create your descriptions, because that's also going to paint a picture in a new way, in a vivid, interesting way. So be sure that you're using literary devices like similes and metaphors. You can use other things like alliteration and that kind of stuff. But my main desire is for you to use similes and metaphors in your writing for this particular essay. So I have a couple examples. The first one, obeying orders, I eat my fresh breakfast with a mix of pleasure and apprehension. So there's my mood, right? Fried eggs and hot buttery biscuits are many breaths of fresh air in comparison to the weeks of cornmeal mush and goat's milk. However, I can't help the knots in my stomach from twisting tighter with each anxious bite. So you have this idea of apprehension at the very beginning of the paragraph, and then anxiety at the end, and then the idea of your stomach twisting. So you have that whole image is all working together. So here's another one. Softly the sounds of a sad melody streamed on the breezes of the windy city. So there's a little alliteration for you. Softly sound, sad, streamed. So if you had a bunch of S sounds, it softens the idea. It kind of brings everything to a hush. So you have softly the sounds of a sad melody. Alliteration does that for you. So think about, if you're going to use alliteration, what would a certain syllable do to your writing? At first the sound flew past me as I wallowed in self-pity, yet suddenly the bard was before me, his dark, nimble fingers pressed and released the keys of the saxophone. I stood there and the world disappeared. In the middle of the rushed footsteps slapping the pavement, this old man with tattered gloves gathered the city into his rhythm. So we have a kind of a moment that stands out, that rushing, and then it all stands still. Just in those descriptions. Alrighty, so things to keep in mind this week. Use your discussion board to try out new descriptive phrases. Be sure to respond to at least 3 classmates in the post and the discussion board. Be sure to take your vocabulary quiz. I will be emailing you a password for the vocab quiz this week. Turn in your first essay to the assignments area of the course in the sensory essay folder by Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. and then contact me if you have any questions. That is all I have for now. I will, of course, be participating in the discussion board and adding new things as we go throughout the week. And thanks a lot. Great job with the first week, and I look forward to seeing your descriptive details come to life. See you later.